Well, what I was going to do was we'd just greet each other, and then I'd say something provocative, and then we'd just flow from there. But the topic for this one is the local and European elections and the right-wingers.
Right, so basically the format of this show then is you say something that triggers me, I go off in one.
Yeah.
Hi, Constance.
Hello, Ernesto. Did you hear that the centre has held?
The centre has held, the political centre in the European elections.
We're very happy that the centre has apparently held. If I hear the phrase the centre has held one more bloody time, I'm going to blow my top.
Well, the centre always holds in politics. Have you ever heard of the Overton window?
Yes, and the centre manages to maintain itself by just sliding in terms of whichever way the wind is blowing. But that just means to me that there is no actual centre, and I don't understand why people keep saying the centre has held, like it's a good thing. What has the centre actually achieved?
Power. The centre has maintained power. So even though the discourse in public switches to the right, and we've now got immigrants getting beaten up in the middle of the street in Dublin in the name of, saving, the children from foreign kidnappers, and even though we've got outright neo-Nazis now sitting in local government, the centre's hold because it's shifted to the right, and the same people manage to stay in control of power. That's what the centre hold means. So it gives the Hugos in the population, the bourgeoisie, the polite middle class, a sense of comfort that not much has really changed, even though everything's changed, and we've now got stormtroopers marching through the city centre in Dublin, cleaning up the streets of Roma and other apparently undesirables. So yeah, the centre holds. The centre holds even after the end of the Weimar period in Germany and the Nazis came to power. The centre held because, it was the centre that gave power to the Nazis.
Well, we're made out of toilet roll inserts, so we can't vote anyway. But I think if I could vote, I probably would. What about you?
I don't see a point in voting. Why would any rational person want to cast a vote? Explain to me the purpose in voting.
Conventional wisdom would dictate that you vote in order to have a say in the trajectory of the future of your community, and by casting your vote, you get to decide who represents you in both local and national parliaments. And then there's also these emotive arguments, like people weren't always able to vote, women weren't always permitted to vote, so those of us who now have the right to vote should appreciate that as a privilege. And also, of course, if you don't vote, you can't complain, right?
Well, that is an argument. It's certainly on all the posters that advocate liberal democracy. But I would say the opposite side of this is that, have you heard of tweedism? Tweedism is the idea that you get a vote and a say in the future or the governance of your community. So you can choose between moron A or idiot B, but there is no choice C. So you can vote for the idiot or the moron, the person who's answering to the people in money and power and privilege, and their political representative. You can vote for one of them or no one else. So you have a feeling that you just had a choice. Look at the United States of America, the greatest democracy in the world. You can choose between a very old man... Geriatric A, a very old man who can't remember his name, and another one who has, I think soiled himself on a number of occasions in public. One of the candidates' sons, is... about to be sentenced, and the other, who is a former president, is about to meet his probation officer. This is democracy, yeah, of course. And of course, this failure of democracy, this pointlessness, or this powerlessness of a democracy to actually change anything is what has given rise to the right. We can't blame the right for the right's own creation. The right is a response to the failure of liberal democracy. And as the old saying goes, I think it was, our best buddy, Lenin, who said that fascism is capitalism in crisis. And this is exactly what we're experiencing. The ruling moneyed class is right now feeling a sense of uncertainty, insecurity. Democracy isn't exactly holding together for it because the public is, becoming frightened and unsettled that the horses have been spooked. But capitalism... The plutocrats are still going to keep their power no matter what, so they're going to unleash the forces of fascism on the street to keep the rest of us in line. Anyway, I should give you a chance to speak.
You sound very cynical.
Cynical? Yeah, I'm cynical. I was born and raised in a liberal democracy through the Cold War. There is only... you can only be cynical. I grew up with Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, and I've seen just one...
Like an awful bathroom.
I know. You have one, messianic promise after another. Remember when... Who was that black fella? Not Bin Laden. Barack Obama. That's the one. Remember when he was elected and we were all told that he was the Messiah? If all of us liberals and leftists just voted for a black guy, and Guantanamo Bay, still there. You know, the process in Gaza is still good, but we're missing the point here. We're meant to be talking about the rise of the right wing in Ireland. You sent me some information from the journal.ie, the paper of record for the infants of Ireland's middle class. Anywho, I had a read at that, and one line stood out, that this is the first time in the history of Ireland that members of an openly far-right party have been elected to office.
Is that true?
The current government, Fine Gael, started its life by sending volunteer soldiers to Spain to fight with Franco, Mussolini, and some chap called Hitler against the communists and the anarchists in the Civil War. And Fine Gael is in power. So do we get to call Fine Gael an openly far-right party? I mean, they did fight for the Nazis.
I think it's a little bit more complicated than you're portraying it as.
Go on, explain.
Well, you're making reference to Owen O'Duffy and the Blue Shirts, right?
That would be it, yes.
So the Blue Shirts was a paramilitary organisation that existed in what was known at the time as the Irish Free State. Its official name was the Army Comrades Association. And it wasn't actually part of the Cumann na Gael party, which was the precursor to the Fine Gael party you mentioned.
It was the military wing, yeah.
It was a group that provided physical protection for them.
Oh, you mean like the SA did for the Nazi party in its early years? Sort of physical protection for politicians?
At the time, they were under intimidation and attacks by the IRA. Some former members of that organisation then went on to fight for the Nationalists in the Spanish Civil War after the group had been dissolved. So not while the Blue Shirts or Army Comrades Association, later known as National Guard and Young Ireland, and finally the League of Youth, still existed. It had already been dissolved before those particular people went off to fight in the Spanish Civil War.
Ah, so that changes nothing.
Very little.
All the same people went off to fight for them. I like this, that the official write-up describes the people they fought for as the nationalists. They fought for the nationalists. Names like Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, Generalissimo Franco, the nationalists. That's a nice way to put it. If you describe these people as nationalists, we tend not to think about Nazis. But for the Nazis.
All of this means that the journal is technically correct, insofar as this is the first time that people openly aligned with far-right parties have been elected to any form of government in Ireland. And they're a very interesting bunch of people.
Oh, they really are. Gavin Pepper. What a lovely character.
So Gavin Pepper is an interesting individual who's just been elected to Dublin City Council for the Finglas Ballymun ward. He is an activist who is based in the Finglas area and is often seen at anti-migrant, anti-immigration rallies in Dublin city centre. He describes himself as pro-Irish, pro-family, pro-life, and also pro-free speech. What does free speech mean in this context exactly? Doesn't free speech just mean not being under coercion from the government as to what you can and cannot say?
Free speech is a code. It doesn't actually have any real legal meaning. The United Nations back in 1948 guaranteed us all the right to freedom of speech and expression and yada, yada, yada. We all have those freedoms. But this code that the right wing uses as freedom of speech is, the removal of all censorship or consequences for the sorts of things you say. So, we are all entitled to free speech, but no one is entitled to shout fire in a crowded theatre, right?
If I want to theatre anymore.
Well, cinema, theatre, whichever, but I don't have the right to that kind of free speech. There are implicit limits on what we can say. And the code that the far right is using right now it's essentially saying, I want the freedom to be openly racist and to speak my mind as a free person and have no consequences for that, not to be cancelled, not to be ignored, to enforce like this, what is he called, the space monkey, Elon Musk, who runs the internet. He wants to be able to say the most racist things he can and not have any blowback. And if he gets blowback, he silences everyone on the internet and, this is nothing new. The right wing has always done this. It's always found a way to, express its hate and its bile and to push down, to punch down, attack migrants and not face any consequences for it. But ultimately, since, was it last November, we had our first race riots in Dublin because free speech, brown people and migrants are criminals, which shouldn't come as a surprise. Brown people are criminals. I think there is about the same percentage of brown people and black people who are criminal as white people because, there's a certain percentage of every population that's criminal. But if I just focus on the black and brown people who do bad stuff, then I can have a race riot. And that's the expression of my free speech. And there today we saw on Elon Musk's Tinterweb page, a video being shared of a migrant in Dublin being assaulted, all off the back of people like Gavin Pepper, ramping up fear. And the excuse that these thugs were using in Dublin, a European capital city. If we talk about us being the West, this is as West as you can go before you go to the Great Satan over the water. The excuse they had was that this chap was trying to, kidnap children. Well, of all the things that never happened today, I'm going to say that was one of them. This guy was not trying to kidnap children, he was just a foreigner. And this narrative of kidnapping children, this is something the Irish media has been at for a long time. Do you remember a story in the media about Roma families kidnapping a little blonde girl that turned out, after the guards got involved, after social services were involved, the whole country was in a state of chaotic, angry racism, hunting down Roma people, and it turns out this little blonde, blue-eyed Roma girl was actually a Roma girl. You don't need to tell the truth.
So basically, the people that we need to look out for are Philip Dwyer, notorious dog-kicking postman, Gavin Pepper, Fergus Power, Malachy Stevenson, Paddy Holohan, and a gentleman by the name of Tom MacDonald, who was very concerned about the Irish dairy industry. And by that I mean that women should be at home making butter and having lots of babies.
These are great women, the great women of Ireland, who has the foundation of our state, are only having 1.5, 1.6 per ratio. And it's frightening. And what I was referring to is the girls to have more babies. Because you even look into Galway, the most popular boy's name in Galway over the last 2 years now has been Mohammed.
I think the term he used was breeding. Irish women aren't breeding enough.
You need to promote having things for our children, and for the women of Ireland,
right.
And the women
on that, Tom, because there was a comment that has been picked up by the Irish Independent this morning, and I was there last night and heard you say it as well, where you said that women need to breed more. We need to breed women more to have more children. What did you mean by that? Because some people would take issue with that kind of rhetoric.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I come from a farming background, I'm my own man originally, and we were born on the farm, so we do talk about animals, we say we breed, or you breed a litter of pups or whatever,
Yeah, but so these are not animals, they're women.
Yes, obviously, yeah. But I'm not a politician, I'm not I'm an ordinary Irishman, and I speak off the hip.
So Tom is associated with an unregistered political group called Éire Saor, and he seems to have some very interesting thoughts on Ireland's demographic trajectory. He said, "We've great women, and we want them breeding. If we don't have women breeding, we die out as a breed, and we don't want that to happen." It's a very agricultural turn of phrase when talking about other human beings.
Well, yeah, but look, this whole we need the Irish women breeding thing, this isn't unique to Ireland right now. The English women have got to be breeding. American white women have got to be breeding right now, because this is a little sort of offshoot of something called the Great
Replacement Theory.
And this conspiracy theory is basically that there's a bunch of Jews somewhere. They're always Jews. There's a bunch of Jews hiding in a room somewhere, possibly a little room somewhere in Russia called what do they call it? The Elders of
the headquarters of the Elders of Zion.
The headquarters of the Elders of Zion.
I'm sure they're all working remotely since the pandemic.
All of these Jewish people, apparently, according to the Great Replacement Theory, are trying to upset the global apple cart by turning white people beige, by bringing lots of black and brown people into our countries, and so that they will, because everyone knows Africans just have lots of babies. According to the far right, it's all African people do. They have lots and lots of babies, and then white women who are because women are kind of stupid. They're not loyal to their race. White women end up...
There does appear to be an inherent misogyny in what people like this Tom fellow are saying.
Yeah, so you've got these stupid white women, according to the right wing's narrative or the far right narrative, who don't have the sense to stick to their own kind, have relationships with black and brown people, and ultimately what's going to happen, according to this conspiracy theory of the Great Replacement, is that the Jews will replace us. Isn't that what they were shouting in Charlottesville? You will not replace us, you will not replace us. This is it, and you've got this Tom fella down in Kildare, using his farming metaphors to speak about, the pollution of our race and our people. This has become mainstream because of the shifting of that Overton window. It's become mainstream, and this insane right-wing narrative is now the right edge of where the centre has now shifted to. And yeah, it serves itself. It ups the temperature, it makes people angrier, gets people agitated, but it still manages, you'll notice, to bolster the position of the centrist government parties, who still got the lion's share and managed to remove a whole heap of other oppositional voices, and these far-right voices have never been dedicated to their criticism of the government parties.
One of the few people to actually be a member of a fully registered right-wing party is Glenmore from the Irish Freedom Party. And the Irish Freedom Party was founded in 2018 and is currently under the leadership of a gentleman called Herman Kelly, who has previously worked with
Nigel Farage. With a name like Herman, you'd never guess he was a Nazi. It's the most un-Nazi of names. Let's make a comic book, right? And in this comic book, we're going to have Nazis, and we're going to have just kind of, I don't know, generic Nazi names. You'd never think of Herman, would you?
Well, Glenn, Herman's prototype and recently elected, is a gay man who has used hashtags including Auslander Rouse. And what's particularly impressive about his use of this hashtag is, you'll never guess, Ernesto, he included the umlaut.
Umlauts are important. Yeah. Auslander Rouse. Yeah, this was a sort of slogan of the very wealthy, what do you call them, the Trustafarians of Germany during their summer parties this year. All got filmed dancing up and down, covering their upper lip with one finger, waving their other hand up and down in a band gesture in Germany. A
kind of late 1930s Macarena of sorts.
Yeah, a sort of very well choreographed, into nice dance music, shouting Auslander Rouse, which means foreigners out. And of course, someone with a name like Herman might be attracted to that sort of language, I guess, if you're called Hans or your second name's Gruber. I don't know.
Finally, we've got Patrick Quinlan, who's the deputy leader of the National Party, or one half of the two-pronged, one side not talking to the other, henceforth shall our houses be twain National Party.
Yeah, one's the German National Party, and one's the one that broke away from it and decided to include a word like socialist. Okay, I'll stop with the obvious analogies.
I think the hundreds of thousands of euro in solid gold bullion that they had in the lockup somewhere in Dublin before they all had a massive falling out is a story in and of itself.
It is. It's fascinating. They ended up with a whole heap of gold bullion that got donated to them from some interested foreign party, but we've heard very little about it. And I actually thought all of that gold bullion was in a lake in southern Germany, because weren't the Allies looking for it at the end of the Second World War? Now Mr. Barrett has it in his little SS uniform. Anyway,
so cute.
Constance, I think we've used up all of our time.
Okay.
We should say goodbye to all the boys and girls who've tuned in to listen to us. Good night, Constance.
Good night, Ernesto.